The word splashed and the word boldness. Firstly, splashed has this very natural connotation, and as her title, A Natural History, might prescribe, but it also has this weird contrast to the idea of a pink flamingo, a plastic pink flamingo. The plastic is not so natural, so that's an interesting contrast to look out for in the future. And also this word boldness. Boldness is now the quality that we are associating with this plastic pink flamingo. And so we're going to look for, is that really a desirable quality? Is that something that she's associating with American culture? Or that Americans want to be seen as? That perhaps that is something that will come up later on in the passage. She says, first it was a flamingo. And this emphasis on the fact that it's a flamingo almost describes how out of place this bird is in an American culture. And she continues to say, since the 1930s, vacationing Americans had been flocking to Florida and returning home with flamingo souvenirs. Now, this word flocking has two purposes, as I see it. Again, looking for words that are chosen purposefully, even within a specific word, can be very important, because this word flocking to me, again, is related to the word splashed in the first sentence, because it is a natural image. Birds flock, and yet it's related to humans in this case. And so how I take from that, I have to think, what is the purpose of her using the word flock to describe humans? And I would say that the connotation is this group of mindless followers in a flock of birds kind of following each other without thinking about the purpose or the substance behind their actions. And
It's the Okomatic, the only tree with its own remote. Summer, autumn, winter, and disco. Come on, Ted, get into it. Dance with the tree.
Oh, it hurts, Mom. Please stop. So, anyway, let's just say I need a tree. Where would I go? What do I do?
Then you know what? You'd need to find the Onceler.
The what?
Mom, it's not really the time for one of your, magical fables, okay?
Oh, that's right. I forgot. I'm old and can't even remember to put my teeth in.
Stand down. That's not what I meant.
And that is a negative connotation. That she's, in some ways, she's beginning a critique of Americans, just in that one word, in my interpretation of this passage. But suddenly, she transitions from these natural images to the first grand hotel, the synonymous with wealth and pizzazz, hundreds of modest hotels, trains, architecture. These are all words that have to do with wealth, and in some way she's referring to the fact that America is perhaps this appearance-based culture, that even the middle class desires to look wealthy, and so they will go to any lengths, as including buying plastic pink flamingos to demonstrate the wealth that they don't actually have. Again, it's a beginning of a criticism of an American culture. And I see that in the transition in adjectives from grand hotel to more modest hotels. The fact that the sign of wealth is now trickling down from the sign of wealth and privilege to the middle class who clearly desires that same image. She continues to say, this was a little ironic since Americans had hunted flamingos to extinction in Florida in the late 1800s for plumes and meat. So this one sentence is the first outright sign of kind of a scathing critique of this American culture. She says, This was a little ironic. This is an understatement, considering. So this one sentence is the first outright sign of kind of a scathing critique of this American culture. She says, this was a little ironic. This is an understatement.
Mr. O'Hare, what we've got for you is something that is going to take O'Hare Air to the next level.
Now, Mr. O'Hare, I know what you're thinking. One, I've gotten rich selling people air that's fresher than the sticky stuff outside. Two, and here's the important one, how can I possibly make even more money? We can tell you, sir. We can tell you.
Check out this commercial, huh?
Well, here goes another lame Saturday.
Dude, I don't think so.
Huh? Hey.
Right here.
Man.
Yeah.
What? Yeah.
O'Hare Purified Air. Freshness to go. Please breathe responsibly.
Huh?
Oh, my goodness.
Love it.
Yeah.
You gotta be kidding me. You really think people are stupid enough to buy this?
Our research shows that if you put something in a plastic bottle, people will buy it.
Exactly.
And what's more, when we build a new factory to make the plastic bottles, the air quality's just going to get worse.
Which will make people want our air even more and drive sales where? Through the roof!
So in other words, the more smog in the sky, the more people will buy.
Gee, that's why he's the genius! It even rhymes!
I'm aware it rhymes.
Totes?
What do you two knuckleheads want? I'm in the middle of a meeting! What? Why is he leaving town? No one ever leaves town! See what he's up to.
Considering she's discussing the extinction of an entire bird, and she discusses that they had specifically been eradicated for their plumes and meat. Again, this speaks to the appearance-based culture. And on the side, I noted it's superficial, and the fact that Americans will go to any lengths to prove their wealth to others. And I also noted that this highlights the ignorance of American culture. The fact that we're bringing back this bird that we killed off for the same purpose that we're using their image now, which is to demonstrate our own societal eminence. She continues, claiming, but no matter. And this little segment describes a few things. First, the tone is sarcastic, really, angry. And it has this underlying tone of irony because there's a disparity between what the reader expects her reaction to be to this extinction and to her actual reaction. The expectation is that this would be an important event that she would discuss further. Rather, she emphasizes the false importance of the role of the fake flamingo in this understatement to highlight the importance of the real one. The fact that Americans have been uncaring, ignorant of their past, and focused on their appearance. And perhaps this statement, but no matter, is actually a reflection, a sarcastic reflection, but still a reflection of the prevailing attitude of Americans towards the destruction that they've caused in their own country, really. Next, she says, back in New Jersey, the Union Products flamingo inscribed one's lawn emphatically with Florida's cachet of leisure and extravagance. So now she's drawing a comparison between appearance versus reality. And the appearance here is of leisure and extravagance, but really in reality, you don't necessarily associate New Jersey with extravagant wealth and being at the top of the social hierarchy. So really, again, she's highlighting the fact that Americans are so focused on their appearance of wealth and leisure that it actually turns into a statement of their lack thereof. Because this flamingo has now become a sign of the middle class, really. Next, Price references Las Vegas, and she calls it the flamboyant oasis of instant riches. And here, she's using Las Vegas as a model for American culture. It's rich, it's flamboyant, it's bold. It's what the pink flamingo represents. And she actually references a gangster, Benjamin Bugsy Siegel, who represents the fact that Americans have this tendency to care more about the accumulation of wealth than the means by which that wealth was accumulated, and that she's highlighting this kind of immoral side of American fascination with wealth, that this gangster who's made money in shady ways could be seen as an idol for his wealth and his flamboyance and his appearance of boldness. And again, it's a critique showing that Americans perhaps value substance much less than they really should. She's raising the question, should a gangster be an idol or a symbol of some sort of goodness or status really in a society? And finally, she has this string, and again, this is something to look out for, repetition of phrases, of words, of letters. So she says, the flamingo motels, restaurants, lounges, cropped up across the country like a line of semiotic sprouts. And so I see this repetition, motels, restaurant, lounges, and to me that string shows that the device is the string, it's the repetition, and the meaning would here be that this pink flamingo has become ubiquitous. It is everywhere, and it's an unpleasant, the semiotic sprouts, it's an unpleasant symbol of, it's false, it's fake glamour, and it's become so popularized that it has really...
I was searching the globe, obsessed with finding the perfect material for my need. But I'd had absolutely no success.
no meaning anymore, other than being some sort of strange and unpleasant decoration. Next, Price discusses the color pink, a second and commensurate claim to boldness. Again, this adjective of bold has been repeated multiple times as something that is associated with the pink flamingo, but now we realize that it's not necessarily good. Bold is not necessarily desirable, but it is what is being desired by the American people, but she's questioning this obsession with boldness, and then she goes on, and again, looking for this repetition in phrases, in letters, and words, we see, she says, the plastic industries of the 50s favored flashy colors. Obsession with boldness, and then she goes on, and again, looking for this repetition in phrases, in letters, and words, we see, she says, the plastic industries of the 50s favored flashy colors. Hey, this is Emma again, and today we're going to end in this alliteration, which counts as repetition, only of the F letters, highlights the frivolous and playful kind of nature of this cultural obsession, and yet it's also not actually so playful. It's really a falsely upbeat kind of phrase to demonstrate how the pink flamingo, what the pink flamingo is seen as, and it contrasts with her true vision of it as this representation of all things that are undesirable in American culture. Obsession with wealth and appearance and materialism. Next, she goes on in the entire rest of the paragraph to describe the kind of popularity, cultural popularity. She quotes Tom Wolfe, "The new electrochemical pastels of the Florida littoral, tangerine, boiling magenta, livid pink, incarnadine, fuchsia, demure, Congo ruby, methyl green." And so here she uses this string, I would almost count this as a repetition, of kind of a fancy description, and that would be, again, bringing up this motif of appearance versus reality. In this, it appears to be kind of this fun and edgy new color that represents a futuristic and modern perspective, whereas in reality, we see it that it's actually kind of trashy and ubiquitous. And at the end, like I said, in our overview video, repetition is going to be seen in practically every analytical passage that you're given. And so if you see it at all, it's often there to emphasize something. And again, I see here at the kind of bottom part of this passage where she says, washing machines, cars, kitchen counters, proliferated in passion pink, sunset pink, and Bermuda pink. And so here I see a repetition of objects and versions of pink. To me, this repetition emphasizes the fact that it's pervasive and really kind of obnoxiously present in American life. It's everywhere. She brings up Elvis Presley. It's the fact that it's not just present in everyday kitchens and household items, but it pervades culture up to the very wealthiest people in this country, the most idolized. And it has this kind of feeling that everything is pink and everything is this false materialistic focus in America. And perhaps that's the point that Price is trying to get across with all this repetition, is that pink and the focus on wealth was overwhelming and in some ways eclipsed what was truly important in life, which is not the appearance of wealth. Why, after all, call the birds pink flamingos as if they could be blue or green? Again, kind of chastises American culture, and she goes on to say, the plastic flamingo is a hotter pink than a real flamingo, and even a real flamingo is brighter than anything else around it. And here she ascribes this American obsession with wealth a false quality. There's something fake, clearly, about this flamingo, and she describes how Americans want flashy things. They want flashy and bright more than they value genuine beauty and meaning. Something with genuine beauty cannot be valued unless it is enhanced or improved, supposedly, in some way. And she's commenting on the sadness of this truth. And in the next section, she brings up this contrast of other cultures with American culture. She uses this string again, this repetition of cultures. She describes the Christians, ancient Egypt, in Mexico, and the Caribbean. These are all places that contrast America, and that they also use the flamingo as a representation of something meaningful, whereas for the Christians it's a phoenix, and in Egypt it's connected to religion, and in Mexico it has to do with art, dance, literature. These are all meaningful, substantive things. And yet in America, she finishes her essay with, the Americans in temperate New England reproduced it, brined it and sent it wading across an inland sea of cress. And it just reveals, again, the unnatural quality, firstly, of flamingos in America, and secondly, how whereas all the other cultures found some significance in the flamingo, all we've done is made it look like an exaggerated version of itself. The flamingo is symbolic of a culture, and other people take meaning from the flamingo, whereas in America, all that the focus is that everyone wants to look rich and modern, and it lacks substance. The fact in itself that this essay has focused on this fake pink flamingo as opposed to a real flamingo, which is significant in other cultures, reveals that Americans have this unhealthy and unsubstantive obsession with appearance, and she is trying to draw this out in this kind of ironic critique of the American culture as a whole, and that has really summed up the entire essay, but specific devices like the alliteration and the repetition that we pointed out and the contrast of appearance and reality, those all are the devices that we talked about in the prompt, how Price crafts the text, and her view of United States culture is really this predominant criticism of appearance-based America. And that is how we've addressed the prompt. We've gone through and taken the meaning and addressed the task that we were assigned. So here we have our annotations all put together neatly on one page. And another thing that I wanted to point out was that let's not forget the title.
Unleashed upon you and curse you until the end of your days. You have been warned.
Thanks. Yeah, okay.
You have been warned. But I didn't listen to his warning. And you won't believe what happened that night.
What?
If you want to hear more, come back tomorrow.
Hey, wait! Tomorrow? Whoa! Are you serious right now? You live in the middle of nowhere. Stinks out here. Don't make me come back.
Then I guess you don't really want to hear the rest of the story.
No, I do. I really do. I want to hear the story. I just...
Nah, you don't have what it takes. Goodbye.
Wait. I have what it takes. It's all right. It's okay. I'll come back. It's no problem. See, here I am. Leaving. Walking away now. I'll see you tomorrow.
Maybe. Just maybe.
What'd you wish for, Audrey? Well, I'd love to tell you, but sadly, according to the universal wish laws, I cannot.
I know what you wish for.
The Plastic Pink Flamingo, A Natural History, which is, again, another kind of ironic jab at the fact that this is really an unnatural phenomenon. That's something you could bring up within your essay or your conclusion. That might be a nice touch. It's always good to kind of bring in extra information from the prompt that might have otherwise been overlooked. It just shows like close reading. And really, this is what my paper kind of looked like by the end of my annotations. Obviously, you may not have enough time to go through all of these in your essay. You may not catch all of these on a first or even second or third read of the passage, and you may catch different things or more things. Really, it's all just a matter of what fits in with your schedule on that particular essay, but I did my best to go over as much content as I could just to give an idea of different devices and how they can connect to meeting. I'm not going to go over an essay outline, though could be basically an outline, because remember, you're going to want to go through your especially your analytical essays, chronologically. You'll want to start when the pink flamingo splashed and end at wading across an inland sea of grass. And that's typically the best organizational method. It's much more clear for you to just go through your paper and say, this is what I wrote by this paragraph, and then just keep going through chronologically rather than having to come back to different devices or different perspectives. I don't know other forms of organization, but this is definitely keeping it chronological can be very helpful. So this has been the second part of our AP language and composition discussion of the analytical essay. I hope it was helpful. Again, it's the 2006 AP. If you Google Pink Flamingo AP language, you should be able to find it and some sample essays and score guidelines. I have some other videos for AP language coming out and that I've already done. So take a look at those if you think they'd be helpful, and thanks for watching.
Oh, Teddy, there's not much that goes on in Thneedville that I don't know about. Here's the deal. I make a living selling fresh air to people.